Maybe. Okay. Without further ado, starting in 3, 2, 1. Panel, understand this one central fact. If I am a person who was born in and grew up in an authoritarian country that has this entrenched cycle of continuous authoritarianism, continuous weaponization of a two-party deadlock in order to create a one-party state that maybe gets dismantled only to be reinstated once more, I wouldn't care if my agency and my democratic rights are momentarily infringed upon, insofar as the main structure, which is preventing democratization and the creation and breaking down the two-party deadlock, but also the mechanisms for maintaining a dictatorship is broken down. Insofar as that is true, I think the main purpose of this debate, or the main incentive or the goal of all sides in this debate should be to show how specifically their stance explicitly contributes to breaking down the structure which allows for the two-party deadlock to exist in Bangladesh, but also how it prevents authoritarian regimes from holding on to power. Firstly, some pieces of setup which is missed by the entire opening half. I think the most important factor in this debate is that there is a unique sense of urgency, but also note, this is a unique point in Bangladeshi history. Never before in Bangladeshi history have we had a comparatively liberal party in the helm who do not have any left-right biases, explicit left-right biases, or at least none, which are connected to entrenched political parties. We have never had a party that has the entrenched incentive to reform ever at the helm of Bangladesh, which means that this is one unique opportunity, and this is one unique opportunity that is limited in time. There is a significant amount of urgency because the term limit of the interim government is fairly limited. Insofar as that is true, I think there is a principal obligation for the interim government to use whatever time they have to act upon the specific unique power that they have in order to push some level of reform that at the very least has a chance of dismantling this authoritarian structure that is entrenched in Bangladeshi politics. As to why authoritarian structure is entrenched in Bangladeshi politics to begin with, I think firstly, the vast majority of Bangladeshi people who live right now, were born into a system where they have only ever known the two-party deadlock. They have never seen anything other than this. They have never seen any other type of political system. They have never seen diverse politics to begin with, which means that they view reform through the lens of a two-party system. That is to say, that people who are reformists in Bangladesh either join Awami League or PNP or Jamaat or whatever, any one of the two main parties in the current status quo, and their way of, and what they do is that they hope that they will be able to somehow convince the main leadership of these parties to maybe consider some of their moderate actions. And I think this is something that's specifically bad. But also, another reason as to why this sort of structure is entrenched in Bangladesh is simple. The institutions that are set in place in Bangladesh, and also the law, penal code, and things like that, are from the colonial era, and in the current status quo, there is no incentive for any established party to engage in institutional reform. Why is that? I think, generally speaking, as all sides have conceded, most established Bangladeshi political parties have the incentive that they want to win the next election and they want to stay in power. And so far as that is true, what they do is that in terms of actually passing policies and passing bills, instead of prioritizing social or political reform, they prioritize specific laws, acts, or bills which are going to allow for them to not only maintain their power but crack down on their opposition. This looks like Awami League not funding rural hospitals but instead enacting the Digital Security Act. This looks like Awami League not funding schools in rural areas in place of madrasas in exchange for having more funds to fund the police so that they can directly crack down on BNP. I think this is a central issue that is specifically handicapping Bangladeshi politics and political reform. Not taken right now. As to how we solve this issue under our side of the world, it's fairly simple. I think in our side of the world, we have a better capacity for individuals, reformists within these parties, to have a better voice because they are not penalized for having the voice in the first place. But here's the most important clarification. It is that the moment in time you have a high-profile interim government repeal such an entrenched and authoritarian article to begin with is something that is going to be like heavily publicized and heavily pointed out by the media. What it's going to do is that it's going to create an influx of reformists into Bangladeshi politics. People who were previously apolitical or politically apathetic or had no hope for reforming Bangladesh previously, now seeing that something like this, something so draconian has been repealed, would now flock to politics, or reformists who are already entrenched within Bangladeshi political structure would be further emboldened, knowing that they do not have a glass city, knowing that they are not going to be penalized, and knowing that they now have, they are probably going to have more similar reformist voices joining their parties in the near future, which means that they simply have the capacity for gaining more reformist voices and gaining a better foothold of politics as a whole. But for I think also it leads to diversification, not only just in the party sense, i.e. there are more diverse opinions within one specific party, but people within a party who have explicitly different views which are very different from, let's say, BNP or Jamaat or any of the two established parties, now have a better ability to form their own political parties because the existing parties are weakened. The moment in time their capacity for forcing every individual member within their party to adhere to one specific stance is taken away. But lastly, I think in our side of the world we have a much better capacity for strengthening existing institutions. That is, in our side of the world, the priority shifts. Because the moment in time you take away the power for these parties to actually hold on to these entrenched systems and allow reformist views greater amount of power and leverage, but also give them more people who are coming into politics as a whole, institutional reforms or bills that explicitly call for constitutional change, updating the reforms or whatnot, or amending certain bills, strengthening the judiciary, strengthening the legislature, strengthening independent bodies that exist within the democratic structure of Bangladesh are going to be elevated to a much greater extent. And with that, I would like to conclude my speech. Very proud.